So our next presentation is from Jay Dietz.
Oh. Hello, everybody. This one? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joseph Dietz. Everybody may know me as Jay, but I am a physics major, and I have a comparative cultural studies major under the GSET program, as well as minors in mathematics and Japanese. And I interned at the University of Tokyo for ocean energy, as well as Kansai University for theoretical physics. But today I'm going to be talking to you about the integration of Buddhism in Japanese society, which is something that I found interesting because I'm a natural scientist. So studying something as interesting as religion is, I got to learn different things from this opportunity. So let me start off by introducing what I'm going to be talking about. Oh, sorry. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Buddhist ideology. Then I'm going to move to the spread of Buddhism, and then move to Buddhism and Japan, and as well as talk about influential characters such as Kukai, and also going to talk about contemporary pilgrimage in Japan. So many of you guys may not be familiar with Buddhism, but it was established in the 5th century by a man named Siddhartha. And Siddhartha was a real person, so subsequently the Buddha was a real person. And the beliefs of Buddhism go as follow. They're as simple as this, but they get a little bit more complicated as you go and study it for your PhD dissertation. But the main idea here is that I want to emphasize the fact that humanity is in a cycle of rebirth, and this is essentially stimulated by karma, or the actions that we do in this lifetime will subsequently affect the kind of world we're going to be reborn in. But there's a solution. So the solution is enlightenment. So naturally, this is some spiritual awakening that frees you from this cycle of rebirth. And the Buddha was a very prolific leader in his community, and he was also able to spread his ideology throughout all of Asia. But he didn't necessarily do it himself. The people that followed under him, his pupils, essentially disseminated Buddhism across Asia. So it moved from India to China, to Korea, and then later in the 6th century, it hit Japan. So you can think of it as like a wave propagating throughout Asia, and as it propagated, these little changes would happen. So naturally, different ideologies, or something like Buddhist or Chinese Buddhism is not necessarily the same as Japanese Buddhism, but they are very similar. So we're going to talk about the pre-existing religion in Japan. One of the most profound religions in Japan, and probably the most popular, is Shinto. Shinto is essentially centered on the worship of these kami, or these deities found in nature. And one of the more important deities is Amaterasu. The reason for this is because the imperial family gets its legitimacy to rule over all of Japan based on these two books called the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. So Amaterasu was essentially the ancestor of the current imperial family. So it's important to note that the Buddhism was there. Shinto was there before Buddhism came. But later, Buddhism came from an envoy from Korea. So it's important to note that Japan gets much of its information from the continent, from China, from Korea, and many of the things in Japanese society come from these two places. It's important to note that Buddhism was welcomed as a universal way of harmonizing everybody within the society, because at the time there were many different not feudal lords, but there was these rival clans that would try to fight for power. And so the Korean king, or king of Pakchek, he essentially sent an envoy to Japan, and specifically to the Yamato family, or the Yamato imperial court, and the Buddhism was ultimately welcomed. So we're going to talk about the Nara period. So the Nara period is an interesting time because this is where the capital was. The capital was in Nara, and the royalty, or the aristocrats, essentially supported Buddhism to essentially unify everybody. And it was also a way to gather wealth. A lot of the times, these Buddhist monasteries would accumulate so much wealth that they would have to arm themselves. There are different instances where the monasteries would grow too large and have too much influence, where they would start to influence the imperial court. So naturally, things started to get corrupt. And so there's some speculation that the emperor moved from Nara to Kyoto to move the capital to escape this sphere of influence. But this hypothesis ignores the fact that the emperor later supported other sects of Buddhism, such as the one established by Kukai. And so, like I said, there are many different kinds of Japanese Buddhism. So there's the Tendai, Shingon, Zen, and Pure Land, and Nichiren. So these span over different time periods, but it's important to note that the most popular one, Zen, which is associated with the samurai class, isn't necessarily intrinsic to Japanese culture. It actually came from Chinese Buddhism. A lot of these came from Chinese Buddhism, which ultimately came from India. But today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Shingon. And Shingon is an interesting religion because it was created by this man, Kukai, or Kobodaishi. And he was essentially one of the most influential figures at the time. He sought to fix the corruption in the Nara monasteries, but he also held a sphere of influence within the imperial court. He was also accredited for creating the Japanese Kana system, as well as establishing a school system for education and educating people. His accomplishments are noted here. But the important thing I want you guys to understand is that this man tried to essentially go back to the way Buddhism was meant to be. It was meant to provide a salvation for the people and not as a means to collect wealth. So this is his sect, the Shingon sect. This is in Mount Koya, which I'll be talking to you guys in a bit. But essentially, these monks are outside of his mausoleum. So what are the key characteristics of Shingon? Well, the key characteristics of Shingon is that it was introduced by Kobodaishi, of course, like I stated, and that the Shinto kamis are just manifestations of this of the Buddha. So it's important to realize that we have this blend. We see this integration of these two different religions, and they harmonize quite well. We also saw the teachings. Anybody can become a Shingon practitioner. It emphasized the esoteric practices, so such as rituals and a lot of, secrets that you needed to know before you became enlightened. So, it's important to note that the Shingon sect wasn't necessarily a rival of Tendai, though they were similar. The Shingon sect emphasized the fact that every sect of Buddhism has something to offer the people. So it's important to realize this because these two sects were coexisting, but they weren't necessarily fighting each other. So that's important to understand. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the place where this monastery or this particular sect of Buddhism is. It's at Mount Koya. I actually got to experience a pilgrimage to Mount Koya, and it was really fun. And this is one of the most iconic places in Mount Koya, and I thought it was probably the most interesting because it's it's very Japanese style. So it's it's not really important what I was going to say next, but so it's important to note that Koya-san or Mount Koya was a place for pilgrimage. People would actually go and actively seek out the salvation that Mount Koya had to offer. It's important to understand also that Shinto also had some really strong kami that lived at Mount Koya. So these two religions didn't necessarily interfere. But the whole entire pilgrimage would take weeks and weeks to do, but it's designated a UNESCO heritage site. But the reason for such a long pilgrimage is because it was in order to move in between sacred spaces. So many of you guys may not know where I'm talking about, so let me just blow it up for you. Not literally, but you know. But here you guys go. So this is where Mount Koya sits in Wakayama Prefecture. It's important to note the placement with respect to Ise. Ise is a head shrine for Shinto. So as you can see the different paths, Mount Koya is kind of in the center. It's very close to other spiritual places that have other spiritual leaders, and as we see like a little community here. So it was really interesting to go to this place. But unfortunately, I didn't get to do the entire pilgrimage. I took a smaller path, I guess smaller being a 7-hour long hike through the mountains. But you're able to find some interesting things, such as these poles where you can essentially not calculate, but you can essentially say how far you've walked, and you can essentially calculate how long it will take you to get to the top, since I'm a very slow walker. So you go into the mountains and you walk for 7 hours, maybe 8 hours, because I got lost with my friend. But I eventually made it to the top, and I think that I guess when you get there, it's not super amazing because it's like you just see the little sign that says you're there. But it's okay. But what's over there? What's at Mount Koya? Well, the head shrine for the Shingon sect is this one. And honestly, when I went there, I didn't even take a picture of it. So I took this picture from the internet. But I honestly thought it wasn't very impressive. But I would kind of want to breeze through this because it wasn't very interesting for me. But I wanted to talk about this, the Okinawan Cemetery, which is one of the most interesting places I've been to because we see different characteristics of Japanese art, Japanese architecture. We see Japanese. Well, I think I really like the wabi-sabi idea. Like there's beauty in something that's imperfect. Because in U.S. cemeteries, you would see it's generally very clean, but here we're able to see some moss grow on the thing, and it just generally looks more beautiful. So I'm going to talk about this for a second. So this cemetery, what makes this cemetery so special is it's a pilgrimage site, and the reason for that is because you remember that guy Kukai I talked about earlier? Yeah, he's essentially in a meditative state forever, until the next Buddha comes. So I guess forever, but he's essentially seeking to help people reach salvation. So people would go to this particular place to go and ask for the help from Kukai, and so this is a very, very big cemetery. It's also designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Another interesting place that I thought was pretty cool was this place where you would actually pray to the bodhisattvas or Buddhas or people that reached enlightenment but decided to stay here and help other people. So that's what they're even helping people, even in this state. People would go and pour water on their feet as a sign of respect and as a sign of giving something to them as an offering. So we also see a juxtaposition between two different styles. We see modern art and also traditional Japanese art in the same place. And I thought that was a very interesting thing to see. So we do see that modern people are still being buried there. And I really like that rocket ship because I like rockets. I want to conclude that Buddhism did actually integrate into Japanese society very well without conflicting with Shinto. Actually, there was an instance where Shinto and Buddhist clans would actually fight for dominance within their region, but in the end, I guess Buddhism and Shintoism managed to coexist. There are also various sects of Buddhism, so depending on if you want to be a Buddhist, you might want to do some research and figure out which one you want to do. Some of them are a little bit more radical, and others are a little bit more strict, so keep that in mind. And pilgrimage continues to be an important part of Japanese culture, I guess more for tourism, but I guess I wasn't the only one doing these pilgrimage sites. I actually got help from an old man helping, and he was just walking in the mountains with me. It was really fun. So people still do these pilgrimages, and Buddhist monasteries do continue to do things for the people, such as weddings, funerals, and etc., and blessings. So thank you for your time. Yep. Any questions? Oh, sorry. What's up?
Is it 7 hours one way, or is it 7 hours total?
Actually, okay, so I don't want to tell, I kind of cheated in the end because I walked 7 hours up the mountain, and I could choose to walk 7 hours back down, but I decided to take a cable car.
Okay.
I told myself I wouldn't, though, but yeah. So, yeah. Oh, questions? Oh.
Do the questions
Oh.
have to be related to the presentation, or?
You can talk about physics if you want, too.
Well, we're on the grapevines. I had a tough time in Kansai. So we talk about how your internship went.
Oh, you want to talk about my internship?
Yes.
Okay. So I at Kansai University, I worked on particle diffusion. So when these particles would interact with each other, they would actually collide. But naturally, when these particles are confined to a fixed space, they would actually spread out over time. But essentially, the motion of each particle is random. So you can't necessarily predict the motion of each particle, but as they collide with each other, they essentially follow this pattern of diffusion. So yeah, that's what I researched. Yep. Yeah. Anything else?
That was a remarkable segue.
Oh, I could talk about physics all day, so no problem.
That's proof of
Yeah.
cultural studies.
Yeah. I guess some of the challenges I experienced in Japan had to do with communication. I'm kind of a person who doesn't like to be wrong, and so people don't normally when you I have an idea or something. One of the things I had trouble with was telling people that they're wrong, and so especially if they're my senpai or someone older than me, especially the master's students wouldn't like it. But I complained in the simulation that something was weird, and I said they disagreed with me and they didn't listen to what I had to say because I was younger than them. But I'm from the U.S., so naturally if you think you're right, you're going to have an argument or a discussion about it. But then there was that discussion where it just kind of just cut off. I'm older than you, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. But in the end, I guess I was right. And of course, sometimes I was wrong, and he correct me. He would correct me too, but I admitted I was wrong. But a lot of the things that happened in Japan is like there's a social hierarchy you have to follow, and I thought like I kind of disagreed with a lot of the things there, but I still liked it. So don't get me wrong, I don't hate Japan. I really like Japan, but I just don't want to work in that environment again. So, yeah. So, sorry, what?
Maybe once you're older and everyone listens to you.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, even the professor though, like the professor is my friend. I kind of talk to him like he was my buddy. Like I would say like this is what I'm doing, and I think he's wrong. The professor would tell the master student, yeah, Jay might have something here, you know, but he would say it in a way it was more polite. Like I'm not very polite. So yeah. So yeah. I mean, I'm honest though. Like honesty is important to me. So anything else? Good. Yeah. Yep.
You have a lot of free time to kind of go out and explore.
Actually, I liked exploring, but I liked working in the lab more, I think, because like you can do these things, but then you, like for me, like I was there because I wanted to research, and I really like research, and I really like physics a lot. So, like I guess I could go hiking again, but after you did like one hike, it's kind of like I like studying, so yeah, good. Good. Anything else? Thanks. There you go. Thank you.